Mark is in the vast expanse of space. A spaceship, while passing through the tail of a comet, was struck by meteorites. With alarms ringing incessantly, the crew in the hibernation pods were jolted awake. The pilot, Caroline, and her colleague, Awei, struggled to their feet only to discover that the captain was dead and the spaceship was completely out of control. Plunging rapidly towards an unknown planet, the descent accelerated, and without immediate action, Caroline and the 40 passengers on board would face certain death. In the midst of chaos, Caroline managed to jettison the cargo from the rear of the ship to lighten the load, barely maintaining a sliver of hope for a crash landing. Amidst the alarms, the spaceship was about to crash. At the critical moment, Caroline panicked and decided to eject the passenger cabin as well. She pulled the lever, but nothing happened. Awei had stopped her. "If we want to live, don't they too?" Before he could finish, the glass shattered, and the spaceship crashed, sliding forward as its body was instantly torn apart. After an unknown period, the survivors gradually woke up. Caroline survived by luck, but a steel pipe had pierced Awei's chest. Fortunately, the planet had oxygen and gravity. Though the light was too intense and the environment desolate, it seemed free from danger. The survivors encouraged each other, unaware that beneath the planet's surface, countless terrifying monsters had long been waiting. Locked in a damaged cabin, a muscular man claiming to be a police officer named William told Caroline about a man named Riddick, who was cruel and extremely dangerous. William was transporting Riddick to a prison on another planet. Although a box of liquor provided a temporary solution, the survivors soon discovered the planet had 3 suns, 2 red and 1 blue, casting a mysterious and eerie light. Despite being restrained, Riddick sensed his chance for freedom upon spotting a crack above him. Enduring the pain, he maneuvered his handcuffs through the crack and silently escaped. Riddick's escape enraged William, who rallied the survivors to capture him. The plan involved some staying behind while William and Caroline led others in pursuit of Riddick and searched for water. They soon encountered huge trunks that turned out to be the skeletal remains of large creatures. Venturing into this bone graveyard, they did not realize that Riddick was lurking silently among the bones. He stealthily approached Caroline and William, and with a sharp bone knife, subtly clipped a lock of Caroline's hair without them noticing, cunningly creating distractions. Riddick led them away as part of his plan to return to the main spaceship. Under the scorching suns, Caroline's group continued, eventually finding a base. Despite its long abandonment, the base had a water source and a solar power system. Caroline's exclamation of surprise revealed an emergency escape shuttle. Meanwhile, a kind-hearted survivor buried the dead and discovered a dark hole leading underground. Curiously investigating, he was suddenly dragged down by a beast, his screams attracting another survivor who arrived only to find blood around the hole and Riddick standing nearby with a bone knife. Riddick fled, and during a pursuit, William attacked him unexpectedly. Familiar with Riddick's weakness, William removed his eye patch, blinding him temporarily. The group subdued Riddick, who was then imprisoned in the darkness. Riddick explained that he had been held in a dark dungeon, forced to fight and endure torment. To survive, he had modified his eyes to see in the dark. Disdainfully, he claimed that it wasn't he who was the killer, but something inside the hole. He warned Caroline of the terrifying instincts he felt about the creature. To investigate, Caroline tied a rope around her waist and ventured into the cave with a flashlight. Inside, the extensive evidence of creature activity made her cautious. As she proceeded, a monster prepared to pounce. Shadows flickered, and a beast's roar surrounded her. Panicked, Caroline climbed desperately towards an upward opening, but her lifeline became a trap. As she screamed for help, the survivors pulled her out just before the monster dragged her back. They cut the rope, and just then, a shadow passed in the cave, signaling the start of a true crisis. William found Riddick, and now facing a common enemy, the unknown creatures of the planet, they agreed to a truce, with Riddick promising to obey William if released. However, Riddick scoffed at the idea, declaring allegiance only to himself. With the creatures ready to emerge at any time, Caroline removed an energy cell, planning to repair the escape shuttle as their best option. Successfully reaching the base, they installed the energy cell, and the shuttle was operational. Inside the base, Caroline announced that they would gather all the energy cells to leave within 2 hours. Suddenly, screams echoed from a warehouse where a boy had been attacked by a swarm of monsters. The creatures seemed to fear the sunlight and retreated into an underground well, leaving only the boy's gnawed bones. Dropping a glow stick into the well revealed human remains. It appeared the base's previous occupants had fallen victim to the monsters. Caroline discovered that the base's samples were 22 years old and operated a planetary simulator, which showed that every 22 years, a giant planet would eclipse the 3 suns, unleashing the underground monsters. Unfortunately, their timing coincided with this event, and as they emerged, a giant planet rose on the horizon. The eclipse began, and with the suns blocked, it was only a matter of time. Using a solar-powered vehicle, the survivors rushed to gather all the energy cells. If they couldn't start the shuttle in time, the emerging monsters would leave them no escape. As the sunlight faded, they reached the main camp, but before they could finish gathering the energy cells, the vehicle lost power, and darkness loomed. Beast-like roars echoed as the survivors looked up to see thousands of monsters swarming towards them, forcing them into a frantic run. In the rear, Riddick had no place to hide and lay motionless on the ground. As a second wave of ferocious monsters attacked, Riddick rolled away, avoiding them. The ground broke apart, and Riddick removed his eye patch. A larger and more ferocious monster approached from a distance. Inside the ship, the survivors were terrified by strange noises in the pitch-black environment, unsure if monsters had entered through the torn ship. In the darkness, Riddick saw a monster crawling above and warned a boy nearby to stay still. However, the boy panicked and ran, and the monster swiftly pounced on him. Another monster targeted Riddick. Riddick ran, leading the monster into the survivors' gunfire. The light burned the monster, revealing its fear of light. They realized that staying in the light could keep them temporarily safe, but remaining there would lead to certain death once the fuel ran out. Caroline made a quick decision, with Riddick able to navigate in the dark. They prepared sufficient light sources and rushed towards the base to board the rescue ship. As they ran, monsters occasionally attacked, heightening everyone's nerves. Eventually, a man broke down, scrambled forward, and accidentally broke a light tube, damaging the power supply. As darkness engulfed them, the surrounding monsters drew closer. The man lit a lighter, took a swig of alcohol, and sprayed it on the fire source, exploding in a burst of flame and blood, which made the monsters even more ferocious. Although they quickly lit oil lamps, they now faced terrifying monsters. What could they do? Roars shook the ground, and Riddick told the survivors that more bloodthirsty monsters were ahead, engaging in deadly combat with each other. William and Riddick led the way, and William asked Riddick what he would normally do in such a situation. Riddick smirked, suggesting that killing someone as bait would make things easier. William agreed and looked back, asking whom Riddick planned to choose. Riddick turned and stared at William, having already chosen his target. The two fought fiercely, with Riddick proving stronger. After injuring William, he retreated into the darkness, watching William, who had been pursuing him, get devoured by monsters. Riddick felt no pity. It turned out William was not a police officer escorting a prisoner but a bounty hunter after Riddick for the money. Now, consumed by monsters, he got what he deserved. Meanwhile, Riddick reached Caroline's group. With the base not far away, the plan was for Caroline and two others to rush to the base while Riddick followed. Dragging a heavy energy cell, blue liquid splashed in the sky as Riddick yelled not to look up because the monsters were brutally killing each other. As the destination neared, rain began to fall, the flames trembled, and an oil lamp extinguished suddenly as a monster attacked from above, dragging away a man. Knowing their fate, Riddick found a cave and secured the three inside while he struggled towards the base with the energy cell in the pouring rain. Finally, Riddick reached the rescue ship, installed the energy cell, and prepared to escape alone, closing the hatch. Meanwhile, in the cave, the lamp went out completely, and just as Caroline and the others despaired, glowing creatures in the cave roof gave them a glimmer of hope. They stuffed the glowing material into bottles to make makeshift lamps. Caroline arrived just in time before Riddick left. Riddick admired Caroline's will to survive, as they were alike. Amidst life and death violence, Riddick had seen too much of humanity's ugliness. He never considered himself good, and his previous actions were all to obtain the energy cell to start the ship. Now that his goal was achieved, he would not risk rescuing unrelated people. Riddick invited Caroline to leave with him, arguing that survival was all that mattered. Caroline trembled, conflicted. Suddenly, she thought of her colleague Awei and her former self, too selfish to abandon everyone. The brief time they had spent together made it impossible for her to harden her heart. Watching Caroline, determined to save others, sparked a slight interest in Riddick. He couldn't understand her motives. In the pouring rain, Riddick and Caroline found an elderly and a young survivor, and four monstrous creatures blocked their path. Caroline and her companions sprinted forward, successfully reaching the spaceship. Riddick covered their retreat but was quickly surrounded by the monsters. On the deck, the two others urged Caroline to leave quickly. Hearing Riddick's cries, Caroline refused to abandon him. She helped the injured Riddick up, jokingly stating that movie heroines never die. The next second, a monster's claw pierced Caroline's chest and dragged her into the darkness. At that moment, Riddick's heart was deeply moved. Inside the spaceship, Riddick sat in the cockpit as the monsters closed in. Instead of fleeing immediately, he turned off the lights. The two behind him urged him on, But as the monsters surrounded them, Riddick finally ignited the engine. The dazzling lights incinerated countless monsters, avenging Caroline. The spaceship left the planet, and Riddick reflected, "The Riddick I was is dead." As the movie reached its conclusion,